You won't get away. Where is Angeal? Tell me!
Professor Hollander has escaped.
Hollander! You won't get away! Hey, stop! That way is the airbase. He's trying to get away by air? No way.
Come.
Ah, damn it. That's far enough.
Really? You sure?
Hey! What is he? Should have known.
I played Crisis Core last year. I liked a lot of it, but I was also peeved by many of the game's systems, and it made my video come off as very negative. My opinions about the DMW system and the mission structure led to that video to sound dramatically more negative than my lasting impressions really turned out to be. As time wore on, my memories tended to focus on the corny cutscenes and Zack's likable personality. My opinions softened on Crisis Core. Now less than a year later, I've played Crisis Core Reunion. I hadn't really followed this game's lead up closely, so I was surprised to find out this game was much more of a remaster than a remake. They did change some systems and give some quality of life features to returning players, but it's far more faithful to the original game than I had imagined. This is very much the same game I played less than a year ago, yet this time I had a much better time. I collected every achievement. That even includes the 300 missions that I complained about the first time. So what's the deal here? What's changed? I already went into the story in the first video I made, but I figured I'd discuss what was different with me and the remake-aster. I don't know what it's gonna, I don't want people to argue about it. Before I get into what's changed about the game, let me explain what's changed with me. The first time, I was going in completely blind. I played without a walkthrough. I was trying to play a prequel to Final Fantasy VII, which is a game I have a ton of reverence for. This time, I knew what Crisis Core was. I knew how it was gonna play. Having that understanding led me to have a more open-minded playthrough. I used a walkthrough to complete a lot of the missable content that I missed out on the first time. Most of all, I was more open-minded about the fact that this was a game designed for a handheld quite a few years ago. The tedium of 300 missions would be absolved if you consider someone playing in many shorter sessions while on the go. The main campaign is segmented into short, linear chapters that can be completed in bite-sized chunks. Is this now one of my favorite games and my favorite franchise? Let's not get too crazy here, buddy. But I will say, considering that I didn't play the original game very long ago, I found myself feeling somewhat nostalgic about experiencing the story again. In short, I had a great time playing Crisis Core Reunion. Let's talk about what has changed in the actual game. Obviously, the game's been upgraded in all aspects in terms of its visual design. The new models and environments are vastly more detailed than in the original incarnation. Perhaps they don't have the same level of visual polish as some of Square's newer entries, like the Final Fantasy VII Remake or Final Fantasy XVI, but it's a huge improvement over the original PSP title. In my opinion, all the changes were for the better and they did a suitable job. Any more effort and they likely would have required changes in the game's structure, especially the environments, at least in my opinion. If you start going in and zazzing up the environments, you're gonna It's gonna change things. All the voice acting has been redone with new voice actors, and I like what they've done here, even if it was jarring to hear some of the new voices for me. The actress who plays Aerith is the same woman who did the performance for 7 Remake. I addressed Aerith's personality in the first video, and I said that she was so sweet she could give you cavities. Her performance captures this effortlessly, and it was perfectly fitting.
Hello? Hooray!
Heaven?
Not quite. It's a church. Hmm?
An angel?
No, I'm Aerith.
Caleb Pierce, however, is the new voice of Sack Fair, and he does a fine job, but it's just difficult getting used to hearing a different voice that you don't yet associate with the character. Rick Gomez's voice was the one that my brain associated with Zack, so it's just difficult to acclimate yourself to something different. Someone who has a long-time love and fascination with the original title will very likely notice the changes of the voices, and whether or not they appreciate it will be a matter of taste. Just to be clear, I think that Caleb's voice performance was perfectly suitable. It was just different.
So, where are you going?
Don't know.
I'll take you.
Where?
Dunno.
You just want to spend more time with me.
Yeah.
Huh? What?
One thing that is clear is the audio quality is substantially better based on my experience. I played the first game on an emulator, so I can't compare to original hardware, but the overall soundscape in Reunion is decidedly more balanced. I was wishy-washy on how I felt about the original OST. The more I listened to it post-game completion, the more I enjoyed it. When comparing my footage of Reunion to my original playthrough of Crisis Core, I noticed that the soundtrack is no longer overpowering the voice lines. I cannot compare to the original PSP soundscape, since I played on the emulator, but one thing is certain, Reunion has a softer touch. Certain songs seem to drown out dialogue before, and now lay more subtly as a backdrop instead of an all-out aural assault. This OST still stands out of the crowd amongst the Final Fantasy titles I've played, and it has its own flavor. Although it may not be my favorite amongst its peers, I've found an affection for it. And since it's been dialed back a couple notches at times, it doesn't seem to stand out in a bad way, especially in the more, emotional scenes.
Yes, I'm coming for you.
The biggest upgrade this game offers to me personally is the way battles flow now. In the PSP title, you had to navigate menus mid-battle to toggle the specific magic and abilities. Now you have a modern control scheme which allows for your magic and ability materia to be mapped to specific buttons. Originally there was a bit of a lag in between each attack or use of an ability, which led to a more active time battle feel. This game allows for actual combo attacks and a more instant and reactive feel to combat. On top of that, you have a second joystick to be able to manually manipulate the camera. What a goddamn lifesaver. In general, the combat flows much better and feels more modern. This game is predominantly combat, so improving the pace and flow is a big deal. I made an offhand remark in my original video about how I was sure someone was going to explain to me how they broke the game using the materia fusion system. I didn't use this system at all during my first playthrough, but I could tell I was missing out by not capitalizing on it. I don't have any specific footage of my first playthrough doing it, since I didn't, So I'll show you what it looks like now in Reunion. You can combine two materia together to form a new materia. Later, after completing some missions, you can also add items in to sweeten the resulting materia. Now, when you plug in the materia and the items, the game will show you the results of this fusion. This is new. Before, you had to take two materia and fuse them in hopes of creating something you wanted. If it was a failure, you lost the original materia, or you had to reload, or obviously, you'd read a guide. I just hate alchemy systems like this that ask you innocently to experiment. Just have fun. Many of these materia are rewards from your gameplay, and I'm unlikely to want to put them on the line for an uncertain outcome. Now that you see what the results will be, it's revealed how helpful this system is in the build of your character. Using endgame materia and a bunch of items, I was able to max out Zack's vitality, spirit, and HP. In fact, fully taking advantage of this situation kind of breaks the game if you so choose. I didn't really go crazy till the end, but yeah, in the end, I so chose. I complained about the first game because if you're running through missions that you were over leveled for, that seemed to not allow for even a single spin of the DMW. Therefore, it seemed to me that it would be impossible to level up in these scenarios. Perhaps I was wrong. That was my perception, at least at the time. One thing I could say for certain is that Reunion will always give you at least one spin of the DMW per battle, even if you're tearing through enemies before the wheel finishes spinning. I probably won't look through my footage for that needle and a stack of needles, but I definitely saw myself level up at the end of battles that were decided very fast. Whether they changed the system to allow a spin, or perhaps this already occurred in the prior game, and now they've made it more transparent, I like this. I noted in my first video that the game does calculate experience in the background, and that is what influences the wheel to decide to land on all sevens and level Zack up. I should admit that I mentioned this briefly in the middle of all my whinging. This is still true, and this time it seemed to give me better luck when rolling. I was at a much higher level even early in the game before I went full balls deep into the side content. I don't know if I could say that they changed anything, but my experience was much more balanced, and I didn't find myself bitching about the rolls in this playthrough. I don't know if the rolls were rebalanced, or maybe I just got less abused by bad luck. I felt like I should acknowledge this since it was the premise of much of my heat in the first video. Having said all that, the game has remained fundamentally the same. The voice lines are seemingly unaltered, at least to my memory. If something's been changed, it's very similar to the original version, so someone like me who's played it fairly recently can't notice any of these changes. This means that the campy story moments remain intact. If anything, it seems like the devs were leaning into some of the cheesy moments with me.
I've become a monster. A monster's objective is usually world domination or revenge.
You're wrong. Those aren't the wings of a monster.
Well then, what are they?
Angel's wings.
I see. Then what should an angel fight for, Zack? What do angels dream of?
The original pre-rendered cutscenes are completely unchanged from their original visual aspect, other than being upscaled from whatever low resolution they were in the original. I played at 4K, and the cutscenes don't hold up to those kinds of resolutions, but that's something that I found completely understandable. Some might have wanted them to completely redo these cutscenes using modern technology, but this is a battle I'd rather not get tangled in. I found the upscaled original scenes to be a nice contrast to the nicely redone models. The in-game character models now stand up to the original CG models. What a time to be alive! Not only are the cutscenes and the story the same, but the missions are entirely the same. I said in my original video that I normally wish that remasters and remakes just remake the original game that I loved and make it prettier, while changing as little as possible in the actual gameplay arena. But I also wish that, in the case of this game, they would take a good long look at the game and make more drastic changes. I'm glad they didn't listen to me in retrospect. There are plenty of people who love the original title and hold it close to their hearts, and I think they walk the line perfectly, making the game more modern while leaving the soul of the game unharmed. Now someone who loves the original game can play a more modern and accessible version, and someone like me can try and find what made all those people fall in love with the game in the first place. I already did a story recap, I won't do so again. As I said before, this is truly the same game, and the story remains completely intact. What I aim for here is to describe a lot of the side content I missed out on the first time. I complained about the side content and the lack thereof briefly in my first video. The one series of side quests that I actually engaged in was the 7 Wonders of Nibelheim. I missed something and then was locked out of the final couple pieces to that quest line. Everything is missable in this game. The story structure is set up in a chapter format, and if you move on to the next chapter without completing something, then you'll be locked out until New Game Plus. I tend to hate this, but I also understand it. This could probably be remedied by a chapter select, but I chalk a lot of this up to the original hardware limitations, leading to a more linear and less open-ended design. Not only that, but this game was made firmly in the era where games were still marketing accompanying strategy guides. Some of the side content would be incredibly missable if you didn't know how or where to look. Before I expand on the content that I missed the first time, let me give you an example of a really hidden side activity. In one of the later chapters of the game, you fight a Genesis clone, and then it's time for Zack to return to Cloud, who's still Mako sick at the mouth of Gungaga. If you've already beaten the boss, you're likely to return from whence you came to see the next story moment. If you hang around the area and farm exactly 7 battles before you leave the screen, you can engage in a minigame where chests drop down from a waterfall. This is also one of the trophies you can achieve for the game. If you don't engage in exactly 7 battles, the game will not prompt you to play this minigame. Without a guide, I can't imagine someone discovering this. When I was younger, I used guides all the time to complete JRPGs, because the idea of missing something killed me inside. I never would have beaten Emerald or Ruby Weapon in high school without the aid of a guide. As an adult, I've soured on the idea of playing with a guide or walkthrough. As I stated, I understand why this particular game is structured in this way, and it doesn't bother me too much, but you should take this point into consideration, especially if you're someone with a distaste for missable content. Since I did use a guide, I did see some fun little side activities. Well, I should say, I actually got to see the completion of those quest lines. Well, they aren't really like traditional quests for the most part. You get it. A large part of the world building in Crisis Core comes from emails that are sent to you from all the people you encounter in the game world. In my first playthrough of the game last year, I met several people who had fan clubs for Genesis and Geel and the play Loveless, but I also missed a few other people who can send you emails. This time, Zack was able to meet the president of his fan club. Zack's biggest ambition is to become a hero, and it was charming to see him get a taste of feeling like one. I met someone who had a Sephiroth fan club as well. Later in the game, some of the fan clubs are starting to disband as they're losing funding, and I was able to help several of the groups work together to save themselves from bankruptcy. Yuffie can be tracked down, and she'll lure you to different missions with directions to hidden chests. When you complete the mission, Yuffie will try and steal the chest's contents using techniques you may or may not be familiar with if you play Final Fantasy VII. Zack is a bit more streetwise than my version of Cloud, and he doesn't get fooled. When her thieving ways are denied, she gets a bit huffy and storms away. I always liked her character, but I really enjoyed seeing this younger interpretation of her, and I didn't get to see any of these missions the first time. There's a lot of different incarnations. I'm not going to show all of them, but, you get the gig. She tries to, here's a chest, snake it away. In Chapter 4, the little boy Bruno steals Zack's wallet. I've discovered it's possible to get his approval to go after Aerith. This time I did all the little tasks that can be accomplished by including crafting a perfect perfume for Aerith. demonstrating your godlike speed to this shopkeeper whilst picking up his materia, and successfully winning the guessing game for the little friend in the corner.
Hey!
Oh, hey, Bruno.
Mister, you leaving? It's a good thing I caught you. Here, I wanted to give you this materia before you go. I promise I'll never steal again.
Hey, good for you, kid. I'm glad I was a good role model.
Mister, don't use that materia to do bad things.
Of course not.
Well, never mind that. There was one more thing I wanted to say. You're a good guy, mister. You and Aerith make a good couple.
Where is this coming from?
Between you and me, I'm pretty sure Aerith is really sweet on you, mister. Well, I'm rooting for you, okay? If you need help, come talk to me, okay?
Looks like I gained a lot of trust. Well, I'll hold on to this materia then.
I didn't know I needed this little bastard's approval until I finally got it. You're doing it, Zach. You're doing it. Somehow I missed out on a squatting minigame inside the Shinra training room the first time. This is 100% important to me, and if you've seen my Final Fantasy VII video, you'll know how much I appreciate these little minigame diversions. In Modeoheim, I complained about my not-so-stealth entry into the property. I kept getting spotted going to the clearly designated hiding spots, and I was incredibly annoyed. This time, that same minigame has been nerfed to ridiculousness, as the soldier's cone of vision has been narrowed to the point of almost blindness. The hiding spots are even more clearly delineated now, and this minigame is presently a joke. I will not shed any tears over this though, and the original incarnation was frustrating as hell to me. I recently watched a video on the 3DS remake of Majora's Mask by Nerl, and he complained that any element of the game that required skill had essentially been nerfed so hard that the original intent of the gameplay challenge was destroyed. His argument firmly won me over. This time, I am the casual that is thankful for the fact that the minigame was nerfed. I don't know how this makes me feel. I guess the balance is restored a bit because the sniping minigame has been left intact, and I pulled out what few hairs are left in my head completing it. Something about the aiming in this segment, I won't try and parse whether the minigame is bad or I am. I mean, no, well, no. I can say definitely, I'm bad at this one. The first time I gave Aerith a flower wagon, and that left her feeling dissatisfied. I said that young Shane would be devastated by this, and now, as an adult, it was funny. That was half true. I did find her reaction to be amusing, but I was also really disappointed with my inability to do any better for her. This time, I assembled 3 separate and beautiful wagons. Well, specifically, 1 lowly wagon, 1 cute wagon, and 1 cool wagon. When you build the story-mandated wagon, she fails to make any money selling flowers. She's forced to find enjoyment just by having the company of Zack? Like a sucker? That's no way to start your entrepreneurial career. With a cute wagon, she can get some actual customers. She loves it.
So, what do you think? Let me guess. You want a nicer one?
This one's cute. I love it. This one's the best yet.
He shoots, he scores! Now, let's go sell some flowers.
Wow, Zach. We're a big hit.
I told you so. At this rate, the wagon will be empty before you know it.
Oh, are these real flowers? Very nice.
But of course, Aerith here tended to them with great love and care.
Really? It would be wonderful to see these flowers growing all around the slums.
Yeah, that's me and Aerith's dream. Not just the slums. Lower and Upper Midgar will be full of flowers.
Bring us home some of that cheddar, baby. Come on now. The cool wagon made out of Shinra parts attracts a completely different audience.
Yeah, it's looking really cute.
You think people will buy?
What is this? I've never seen this type before. Is it the latest Shinra weapon?
No! Can't you tell? It's a flower wagon.
Would you like some flowers?
No.
What are you staring at?
I'll give you 10,000 gil for this. I may be able to convert it into a powerful weapon.
Forget it! This wagon, I made it for Aerith, with my very own hands.
10,000 gil.
Huh? What? Aerith, are you? Hey, pal, if you're not buying, then scram.
This is the reported area. The weapon is here, preparing to engage.
I keep telling you, it's just a flower wagon!
These are my favorite types of rewards for engaging in side content. Reward me with some additional character interactions. Zack and Aerith needed more interaction, and completing some of these small tasks gives you more time with them together. Their puppy love was probably my favorite element of the game my first time through, and this has been further cemented now. This time I completed the 7 Wonders of Nibelheim for the little boy. I realize now that I failed to save the poor boy's mother from a burning house by turning away too quickly, and I do not blame a lack of a guide for this. His mother was actually the 6th Wonder of Nibelheim. She was the boy's treasure. The fact that I let his mom burn to death unknowingly on my first pass makes me kind of mad at myself. She may be ones and zeros, but god damn it, she is that boy's ones and zeros. I wrote that down, and it made sense when I wrote it down, and then I'm leaving it. The final wonder is a materia he leaves in town for Zack. The first couple wonders, including the Phoenix materia turning the town's water supply red, and the inn owner's mysterious changing painting, are still the peak of these side activities for me, but I felt much more contentment in being able to actually complete it. I'm sure I've explained this in the past, but in my youth, I didn't get a lot of games. My dad was a teacher and a coach. My mom didn't work. I had to stretch out games to bring out all the potential enjoyment. I now have a successful career and a wife with her own. What I lack now is the time to complete all these games I can afford to buy. I still have to fight old habits though. I'm taking great pride in only completing games that have kept my interest and don't feel tedious to finish. I think that's a point in this game's favor that I was able to do that. Completing this game also entails completing all 300 missions, which includes the Minerva Super Boss. I still contend that 300 missions is friggin' lunacy. Having said that though, my playtime on Steam shows 40 hours, and that includes probably 5 hours of leaving the game AFK. More on that soon. Even though going through this many missions can be tedious at times, it's not as time-consuming as one might imagine. The missions also unlock the best accessories and materia in the game. To reiterate, I think dropping half these missions would not be a detriment to the game, but I also kind of get it now. Plus, if you're playing a Switch or something portable, it's more time you can spend in the game taking it in small bites. The Minerva DLC boss is essentially the stat check. If you haven't maxed out at least your defensive stats, you're gonna have a hard time. Almost like you french fried when you're supposed to pizza, if you know what I mean. She has several attacks that can easily one-shot you if you don't have great gear and stats. Not only that, but her ultimate cancels out all your buffs. I found this out the hard way, as that also includes the auto raise buff. This is not my most triumphant moment in my gaming career, but I enjoyed partaking in this boss challenge. After Minerva, even the final boss on hard difficulty was laughable. I don't think I mentioned in my other video, so I'm just going to include this tangent here. In most JRPGs, you have a whole party in battle with you. If one falls in combat or perhaps gets a status ailment that leaves them vulnerable or useless, then you still have other members that are around to bring them back to form. Usually you sacrifice potential damage to the enemy to get your party back to fighting form. In Crisis Core, you have only Zack on the battlefield. If he gets a confusion or stun ailment, then it's really bad news. I'm pretty much always miserable about every status ailment in every game I've ever played. I understand their role in games and building your loadout to protect against each challenge, or at least having the appropriate heal for these debuffs becomes part of the gameplay loop. That doesn't mean I'm not a salty bitch when I get afflicted by some insane debuffs by a Marlboro. Because you don't have this buffer from other party members, your biggest salvation in Crisis Core will be Phoenix Downs, which do not revive you on use as they did in prior titles, but cast auto raise. This means that Zack will automatically be revived upon death. Phoenix Downs are in limited supply, and the only alternative is getting lucky at the DMW casino and hoping for a Phoenix summon. This game is far from the hardest game in the world, but especially if you don't engage in the materia fusion system, you can die quick, and status ailments hit harder than in most other titles in this franchise. I'm pretty persistent, but I can imagine some people being more frustrated than me. Luckily, one of the not mentioned quality of life features is the ability to replay battles you lost, and even re-gear before them. Get killed by an enemy that stun locked you? Now you can directly equip the accessory to counter it and get back in there. Also, you can skip cutscenes, so even if you have to replay game segments for one reason or another, you can skip past scenes you've already experienced. This has got to be heaven sent for the speedrunning community. So that's my comparison segment out of the way. As I said, I found a different level of enjoyment this time. The actual mainline story was less bogged down by complaints about the gameplay systems. I'm still not a fan of the DMW system as a whole, no matter how well they pull that ending off. Even in this playthrough, I had moments where I would die to something, retry the battle while changing almost nothing, and simply roll better and have a vastly different outcome in the battle. This is enough evidence to me that the system contributes too much to success or failure in combat. I mentioned that I had like 5 hours of AFK time. The explanation is simple. In order to grind all the DMW options and level up my summons to 100%, I left the game on overnight. If you craft a system where an AFK exploit is actually the meta, then perhaps you should take a look at it. But I'm here with 100% completion. Being able to use magic without having to cycle through a menu, all while having direct access to camera control, makes these battles feel so much more contemporary. The side content fleshes out the game a lot better, but it still feels lacking in the more conventional side quest activities I've grown accustomed to from other Square games. I feel the game could have been a lot better with more stuff like the 7 Wonders of Nibelheim, but then again, the past Shane would probably be bitching about it being so missable. Plus, if they made less missions and more quests, I could be sabotaging someone else's enjoyment with my ideas. Some people, I'm sure, loved having all those missions. Squeenix didn't put Final Fantasy VII Remake levels of money into this game, and it shows. But I also don't think that was necessary. The game looks and plays much better. The story is silly at times, but it also has a lot of heart. I already loved Cloud, Aerith, and Yuffie, but Crisis Core did a good job of making me really like Zack. He's honorable, lovable, and goofy. He's the anti-Cloud, really. Most of Final Fantasy VII, Cloud is really putting on a front and acting cool. He doesn't know who he is, really. Zack is quite confident in who he is and what his motivations are. Without the distractions of being bothered by the actual gameplay, I was even able to appreciate Hot Topic Sephiroth. Sorry, even more Hot Topic Sephiroth. Genesis and his incessant citation of Loveless was far less grating this time. The story of Loveless might have been written in a language that I didn't find engaging, but the through lines between the words on the page and the characters in Crisis Core are still very self-evident. If I'm being honest, what this game is best at is obscuring its deficiencies and allowing me to focus on its moments of quality. If someone asks me about this game in a couple years, I'm sure I'll be shitty about the DMW, but I'm going to spend more time talking about chasing Hollander around and watching his amusing running animation. I still can't believe they didn't touch his animation. He still looks just as goofy. It's glorious. I'll tell people that I reveled in being able to see a romance blossom between a young Zack and Aerith. I love being able to experience Nibelheim with Zack's perspective. The most impactful memory of Crisis Core will be the way it ends. It ends with a goddamn bang. The truth is that in most cases, it isn't how you start, but how you finish. This game finishes strong. In my opinion, there is no reason to play the original Crisis Core now. Reunion gives you everything the first game gave you, just in a more readily accessible and pretty package. Did any of you guys play Reunion? How about the original? Did you find this video and miss the one I referenced over and over in this video? If so, check that out. Or maybe watch my long-ass Final Fantasy VII recap for schnitz and giggles. Thanks for those who clicked, and even more for those who stayed. Peace in the Middle East, rain in Spain, word to Big Bird, finger guns. See ya.
So this uncle of yours, what's he like?
Uncle always wears really nice clothes. He's stylish. His house is up in Wall Market. Inside his house, everything's all shiny and golden. He told me that his job is being a Don.
A Dawn? That's a strange job name.